So Aaron Roberts from Vision Office. We're looking at Fenwick Street, which is a pretty remarkable site in terms of its context and its proximity to the city and its sort of outlook over the Birrarung and the associated broader valley. It's located right on the edge of the escarpment here, in really close proximity to the boulevard and obviously the kind of the associated river. It's in a context of a lot of really interesting 50s and 60s postmodern housing, but also a lot of heritage buildings of contributory significance, including directly neighbouring buildings, which was a bit of a challenge in terms of the council and so forth. Just thought I'd show you a couple of existing site photos prior to the development, and I think probably the key things to think about here are the views and the connections from the streetscape through to the horizon line in the background there. And in many ways the project was about taking these interfaces and amplifying them and drawing them through the site and allowing those connections to the broader landscape to exist in the public realm once we'd finished the project. This is a very early town planning diagram, which really describes a lot of the intent around the project, which was rather than having a singular pavilion in the middle of the site and really kind of breaking those views to the distance from the public realm, we felt that breaking the building up into a series of pavilions would really help draw those views into the site, and also helps us kind of break down the scale of the overall project, in that it's on a site which typically housed a single residence, and I think this is one of those projects which really wanted to feel more like a single residence or a series of smaller residences rather than one large building, which meant that we had to dig really deep and reconstruct this landscape. So the entire site was pretty much cut away right on the edge of the escarpment, which meant a lot of engineering feats and also, I guess, this sort of reconstruction of the ground plane throughout the development. Really quickly take you through the plans. Lower basement, so you come down from the southwest along the ramp into a series of car parks and so forth, and then into some further car parking at the upper level. And this is where we really start to connect into the various different residences. The residence to the street on the corner at the sort of fulcrum moment was a single residence and multi-level. So we ended up having quite a few kind of spaces which drew down into the edge of the basement and brought natural light. So here you can get a sense of that street pavilion, I guess, and the courtyard, associated courtyard, which draws light into that lower level. And the various different plans. So really trying to amplify allowing as many of the apartments to have that full kind of gamut of the view to the valley along the northern edge, and breaking it down across the northern edge and this larger void in the middle of the building. And that void in the middle of the building was really important from a natural ventilation, but also natural light point of view. But obviously you have those sort of extreme interfaces of privacy, which in terms of the market and where the developers wanted to pitch this, a lot of these residents had to maintain that pretty intense privacy. As we move up through the second plate, it's similar along the north. And then as we arrive at the top, we have quite large singular apartments on the two northern pavilions and the living space for the townhouse at the street edge. And what we're interested in trying to achieve here was maintaining a two-story built form to the street such that it linked into its neighbouring context in terms of scale and size, and then dropping down to 3 stories at the north. But obviously there's a very deep footprint to allow that to happen. A view of the development through the canopy along the boulevard and that sort of intensity of that escarpment here. And this is really, talking about that drawing in of the distant landscape through the middle of the development and along the edges of the upper floors. Eckersley's Garden Architecture were the landscape designers and did a really good job of, re-establishing what was, you know, as you saw earlier on, a fairly decimated landscape. And I think that this image here is really that, speaking about that earlier diagram where standing on the street, you get a sense of that broader landscape beyond and can be drawn through. And that landscape can be drawn right through into the more immediate landscape. We had this idea of, I guess, a fairly, naive or intuitive approach to the project generally, where we were interested in the notion of a building becoming a bit of a relic over time, and that the building would be subsumed by the landscape as time went on. So screening that was associated with privacy between the dwellings is copper to allow it to patina with the landscape as it kind of subsumes the building. Another thing that we were interested in doing was kind of breaking down the scale by sliding the floor plates, much to the consternation of the builders and engineers and everybody involved. At 1 minute or two?
You've got 2 to go.
2 to go. I'll go fast. But I mean, really, a lot of that sort of bulk, I guess. The only way we were interested in using a singular material, and the only way that we felt we could really break that down was to kind of slide these floor plates around so that you could really start to read the scale as it fell down the side. And then this is that street pavilion, which maintains that double story scale, and not the 3 levels. And this is, I guess, a sense of some of those views as they open up to the north. And really quickly, the interiors were designed by Flack Studio and some styling by Simone Haag in one of the apartments. And really, what we were fairly hands-off in terms of the interior design work, so I won't go into much detail here, other than to say that there was a lot of eclecticism and idiosyncrasy around references to post-war modernism and hotel lobbies apparently, but anyway, there we go. And this is, I guess, that sense of the view that you take in once you're at the front northern interface of the apartments and its relationship to the escarpment and the valley beyond.